Death row is a term used to describe the period a prisoner spends awaiting execution after being sentenced to death. It represents the final stage of the criminal justice system in countries that practice capital punishment. The purpose of death row is to ensure that individuals convicted of the most heinous crimes, such as murder, terrorism, or crimes against humanity, face the ultimate punishment as determined by the judicial system. While proponents argue that the death penalty serves as a deterrent to crime and a form of justice for victims and their families, opponents criticize it as inhumane, irreversible, and often applied unfairly. Throughout history, executions have taken many forms, with some methods being far more brutal than others. The evolution of execution techniques has been driven by a desire for both efficiency and humanity, but many historical and even modern practices have led to excruciatingly painful deaths. While some countries have moved toward more humane methods, such as lethal injection, others still use methods that have been widely condemned by human rights organizations. Additionally, botched executions have occurred, leading to prolonged suffering for the condemned. The combination of outdated techniques, human error, and flawed judicial processes has resulted in some of the most horrifying executions ever recorded. The following discussion will explore some of the most gruesome and botched executions carried out on death row across the world. These cases highlight the dark side of capital punishment and raise critical ethical questions about the justice system. From electric chairs that failed to work properly to hangings that resulted in slow, agonizing deaths, the stories you are about to hear are disturbing, but they provide a crucial look into the reality of state-sanctioned execution. Disclaimer. This topic contains graphic descriptions of violent executions that may be disturbing to some readers. The intention is not to sensationalize these events, but to provide an objective look at the brutal reality of capital punishment throughout history. Viewer discretion is advised, as the details discussed may be unsettling for some audiences. If you are sensitive to such topics, please proceed with caution. As we move forward, we must ask ourselves, is there truly a humane way to carry out the death penalty? Or should societies move beyond such punishments altogether? Regardless of where one stands on the issue, understanding the reality of these executions is essential for an informed debate on justice, ethics, and human rights. 1. The electric chair, USA. Initially introduced as a more humane alternative to hanging, the electric chair became infamous for gruesome failures. There have been multiple cases where executions went horribly wrong, with prisoners experiencing prolonged agony due to electrical malfunctions. Some individuals were subjected to multiple shocks before death, leading to horrific burns and suffering. 2. Hanging, Iran, Japan, India, etc. Hanging remains a common method of execution in various countries, but its effectiveness depends on precise calculations of the drop length. When miscalculated, a botched hanging can either cause slow strangulation or accidental decapitation. In numerous cases, prisoners have struggled for minutes before succumbing to asphyxiation, making it one of the more unpredictable and painful methods of execution. 3. Lethal injection, USA. Considered the most modern execution method, lethal injection has been promoted as a painless alternative. However, multiple executions have been botched due to incorrect drug dosages or poor administration. Some prisoners have suffered convulsions, intense pain, or prolonged deaths lasting over an hour. In some instances, executioners have struggled to find a viable vein, further exacerbating the condemned individual's suffering. 4th. Firing squad, Indonesia, North Korea, etc. Used in countries such as Indonesia and North Korea, execution by firing squad is often seen as a swift and decisive method. However, reports indicate that not all shooters hit their mark, leading to slow, excruciating deaths for the condemned. There have been cases where prisoners survived the initial round of shots, requiring additional execution attempts. 5. Beheading, Saudi Arabia. In certain regions, particularly Saudi Arabia, beheading is the chosen form of capital punishment. Performed with a sword in public executions, this method is meant to be instantaneous, but reports suggest that it is not always clean. In some cases, multiple blows were required to fully sever the head, causing severe suffering for the condemned. The gruesome nature of beheadings continues to spark controversy and international criticism. The discussion of execution methods highlights the disturbing reality of capital punishment. While some may argue that the death penalty serves justice, the sheer number of botched executions raises serious ethical concerns. Many question whether there is truly a humane way to take a life, or if society should move beyond such punishments altogether. Regardless of one's stance, it is crucial to acknowledge and examine the harsh realities of execution methods worldwide. Understanding the suffering endured in these cases is essential for fostering informed debates on justice, ethics, and human rights. I've expanded the document to include detailed sections on notorious execution methods. Let me know if you need any further modifications or additions. Willie Francis, USA, 1946. Willie Francis was a 17-year-old African-American who survived an attempted execution in Louisiana. The electric chair malfunctioned due to improper setup by an intoxicated prison guard, leaving Francis screaming in agony but still alive. He was eventually executed successfully a year later, sparking a debate about the ethics of re-executing someone who had already endured such trauma. 2. Joseph Jacobs, UK, 1941, a German spy captured during World War II. Joseph Jacobs was the last person executed by firing squad in the UK. Due to a leg injury that left him unable to stand, he was seated in a chair during his execution. The unorthodox position created complications, and his death was not as instantaneous as intended, raising questions about the humane nature of such executions. 3. Tom Ketchum, USA, 1901, an outlaw of the American Old West. Tom "Blackjack" Ketchum was sentenced to death by hanging in New Mexico. However, due to miscalculations in the rope length and weight adjustments, the force of the drop was so extreme that it decapitated him. His headless body was left hanging, shocking witnesses and demonstrating the gruesome consequences of poorly planned executions. The discussion of execution methods highlights the disturbing reality of capital punishment. While some may argue that the death penalty serves justice, the sheer number of botched executions raises serious ethical concerns. Many question whether there is truly a humane way to take a life, or if society should move beyond such punishments altogether. Regardless of one's stance, it is crucial to acknowledge and examine the harsh realities of execution methods worldwide. Understanding the suffering endured in these cases is essential for fostering informed debates on justice, ethics, and human rights. I've added a section detailing historical cases of botched executions, including Willie Francis, Joseph Jacobs, and Tom Ketchum. Let me know if you need any further modifications. The agony of waiting on death row. Many prisoners spend years, even decades, on death row, often in solitary confinement. The prolonged uncertainty and psychological torment can lead to severe mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, and psychosis. The waiting process itself is considered a form of cruelty by many human rights organizations, as prisoners live under constant fear of execution, with some experiencing last-minute reprieves or delays. 2. The global debate on humane versus inhumane execution methods. While some countries strive to make executions as painless as possible, others still employ archaic and brutal methods. Debates continue over whether methods, such as lethal injection, truly provide a humane death, or if they simply mask suffering. Additionally, the risk of botched executions raises serious concerns about whether any method can be considered ethically acceptable. Third countries that have abolished the death penalty versus those still practicing it. Over 100 countries have abolished the death penalty for all crimes, recognizing its ethical and legal implications. Nations such as Canada, the UK, and most of Europe have moved away from capital punishment, citing human rights concerns. However, countries like the USA, China, Iran, and Saudi Arabia continue to implement the death penalty, arguing that it serves as a deterrent and delivers justice. The divide between abolitionist and retentionist countries highlights the ongoing global controversy surrounding capital punishment. The discussion of execution methods highlights the disturbing reality of capital punishment. While some may argue that the death penalty serves justice, the sheer number of botched executions raises serious ethical concerns. Many question whether there is truly a humane way to take a life, or if society should move beyond such punishments altogether. Regardless of one's stance, it is crucial to acknowledge and examine the harsh realities of execution methods worldwide. Understanding the suffering endured in these cases is essential for fostering informed debates on justice, ethics, and human rights. I've added a section discussing the psychological torment of death row, the global debate on execution methods, and the divide between abolitionist and retentionist countries. Let me know if you need any refinements. The moral dilemma surrounding capital punishment remains one of the most contentious issues in modern society. While some view it as a necessary form of justice, others see it as an inhumane relic of the past. The numerous cases of botched executions and the psychological torment endured by those on death row only add fuel to the debate. Many human rights organizations continue to push for reforms and advocate for alternative sentencing, such as life imprisonment without parole. The goal is to ensure justice is served without the risk of wrongful executions or unnecessary suffering. As the world moves forward, the question remains: is there truly a humane way to take a life? I've added a conclusion reflecting on the moral dilemma of capital punishment, the push for reforms, and a thought-provoking final question. Let me know if you need any changes.